HOA sent fake officers to arrest me, but I'm the chief of police. The morning air was calm, the kind of peaceful silence that wraps around a neighborhood before the day truly begins. My house sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac in Cedar Creek Estates, an upper-middle-class suburban community with picture-perfect lawns, pastel shutters, and people who cared more about appearances than kindness. I'd lived there for 4 years now, quietly, anonymously. No one knew who I really was, and that was by design. To them, I was just Mark Ellis, the quiet guy with a German Shepherd and an old truck. What they didn't know was that for the past 18 years, I had served as the chief of police for the county. I had seen every kind of power game, every sort of manipulation. But even then, I wasn't ready for how far the Cedar Creek HOA would go. It started with the flag. I had hung it on the porch one summer evening. A small, neatly folded American flag with a thin blue line stitched across it. A simple emblem of solidarity for law enforcement. But in Cedar Creek, it became a scandal. 2 days later, I found a notice taped to my door. Asterisk violation, unauthorized exterior decoration. Remove immediately or face fines and potential enforcement action. Asterisk. No signature. Just the HOA letterhead. I remember standing there, coffee in hand, staring at the paper and laughing under my breath. It was absurd. My flag was clean, respectfully hung, and didn't violate any written rule in the community charter. But in HOA world, rules bent to personalities. And there was one personality in particular who thrived on that power. Karen McMillan. Every neighborhood had one. Ours just happened to have one with a title, HOA president. Karen lived 2 houses down. Her lawn looked like it had been manicured by the hands of angels, and her smile was as sharp as the pruning shears she carried during her morning patrols. She was the self-appointed guardian of order, and if something didn't fit her vision, she took it personally. I ignored the first notice. I always gave people a chance to act with reason before responding. But 2 days later, another envelope appeared in my mailbox, this time certified, with a late fee attached. The tone had shifted from firm to threatening. Failure to comply will result in HOA enforcement measures, including potential legal action and suspension of community privileges. That was when I decided to pay Karen a visit. I walked up her immaculate driveway one evening. She was outside, of course, clipping her roses and pretending not to see me. When I greeted her, she barely turned. "Karen," I said evenly, holding up the notice. "I received this. I think there's been a mistake." She smiled tightly, eyes never leaving her flowers. "There are no mistakes, Mark. You know the rules. The HOA guidelines are very clear about external displays." "Actually," I replied, "they're not. Section 3 allows flags of national and law enforcement significance." Karen froze for a moment, then turned to face me. Her smile faltered, but her tone stayed sharp. "Well, the board has decided that particular flag represents divisiveness. We strive for unity here." "Unity?" I repeated. "You mean conformity?" Her expression hardened. "If you don't comply, you leave us no choice but to escalate this." "Do what you need to do," I said quietly, then walked away. For the next week, things were tense. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Karen and her board members started sending out more notices to random homeowners. Grass too long, trash bins visible, mailboxes too dull. It was as if my defiance had triggered a neighborhood crackdown. Then came Saturday. I was in my backyard, cleaning the grill, when I noticed 2 men walking toward my driveway. They wore dark uniforms, badges, and belts with what looked like tasers. Their demeanor was stiff, rehearsed. Something about them felt off. One of them called out, "Mr. Ellis, we need to speak with you." I set down my cleaning brush and walked over slowly. "What about?" "You're being cited for repeated violations of HOA ordinances," the man said. "We're authorized to escort you to the office for questioning." I blinked. "The HOA office?" "Yes, sir. Please comply." That was when I noticed it. Their badges weren't real. The fonts were wrong, the shine too bright, the names unengraved. Their radios had no signal lights, and their cuffs looked like cheap plastic. "Who sent you?" I asked quietly. The taller one stiffened. "Sir, we don't want to make this difficult." "You already did," I said. I took a step closer, meeting his eyes. His confidence cracked under the silence. I had seen hundreds of fake cops in my career, but this was a first for my own front yard. "You know impersonating an officer is a felony, right?" I asked. He hesitated, then looked toward Karen's house. That told me everything. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my badge, and flipped it open. The gold caught the sunlight like a blade. Chief Mark Ellis, County Police. Now tell me again who sent you. The man's face drained of color. His partner took a step back. The quiet hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street seemed to stop altogether. It was one of those moments when time slows down before the storm hits. We were just told to deliver a message, the man stammered. From who? I asked. He didn't answer, but his eyes shifted toward Karen's porch. And there she was, arms crossed, sunglasses on, pretending to trim her flowers again. I turned my head slightly, just enough for her to know she was caught. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply said, stay right here. Then I walked straight toward her yard. Karen glanced up with forced surprise. Oh, Mark, everything all right? Not really, I replied. You want to explain why two men pretending to be officers just tried to arrest me on your behalf? Her lips twitched. She tried to play it off. That must be a misunderstanding. They're security, not officers. Security doesn't make arrests, I said flatly. And they don't wear fake badges. She faltered for the first time. Her confidence slipped. Behind her, a few neighbors had started watching from their porches. You overstepped, I continued. You violated the law trying to enforce a rule that doesn't exist. I was just trying to maintain order, she said defensively. Order? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. This isn't order, Karen. This is control. And it ends now. For a moment, no one spoke. The fake officers shuffled awkwardly, realizing the situation had turned against them. Karen's face flushed red. Her voice shook slightly. You can't talk to me like that. I have authority here. I stared at her, calm and unblinking. Not anymore. I turned and walked back toward my house, dialing my phone as I went. My deputies would arrive in 10 minutes. I wasn't going to press charges right away, not yet. I wanted to see how deep this went. As I reached my porch, I could still hear Karen's voice behind me, a mixture of panic and pride. This isn't over, Mark, she shouted. You think you can just ignore the rules? I didn't answer. I just looked out across my lake, the sun reflecting off the water. I could feel the shift in the air. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because when people like Karen lose control, they don't back down. They double down. And I had a feeling this battle with the HOA had only just begun. The neighborhood felt different the next morning. The air wasn't calm anymore. It was charged. The kind of quiet that hums with whispers behind closed curtains. I could feel eyes on me when I walked out to grab the newspaper. People who used to nod politely now turned their heads, pretending to be busy pruning hedges or sweeping already spotless driveways. Cedar Creek Estates had always been a bubble. A pretty one, but fragile, and now it was cracking. Karen hadn't spoken to me directly since the fake officer incident, but her silence was louder than words. The HOA Facebook page had suddenly come alive with passive-aggressive posts about respecting authority and following community standards. No names, of course, but everyone knew who it was about. By Monday, I received another envelope. No signature again, just that same HOA letterhead and a smug tone printed in black ink. Asterisk notice of escalated enforcement. Due to continued noncompliance, the HOA has initiated legal steps. Failure to cooperate may result in community restrictions and fines. Asterisk. It was laughable, but also concerning. Karen was playing with fire. And the worst part was, she didn't even realize it yet. I took the letter inside and placed it on my kitchen table. My German shepherd, Duke, watched me with quiet curiosity. Don't worry, boy, I muttered. We're not losing to a woman with a clipboard. I called my deputy, Grace, that afternoon. Chief, she answered. You want us to move on the impersonation case? Not yet, I said. Let her think she's still in control. But keep an eye on any public complaints with my address. I have a feeling she's not done yet. Grace chuckled. Copy that. She picked the wrong man to mess with. That night, I saw her again. Karen was standing under the street lamp outside her house, talking to a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, dressed in a sharp gray suit, and had that polished arrogance of someone who thought rules were for everyone else. They talked in hushed tones for a few minutes before he walked toward a black SUV parked at the curb. I noticed the custom plate, Cestate 01. So the board was involved now. I waited until morning before making my next move. The HOA held its monthly meeting at the community hall, a brick building next to the tennis courts, decorated with fake plants and too much optimism. I hadn't attended one since moving in, But tonight, I planned to show up. When I arrived, the parking lot was full. Residents crowded inside, chatting in small groups. At the front, Karen sat behind a folding table, surrounded by 3 other board members. Her pearls gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Her smile was tight but confident. "Welcome, everyone," she began. "Before we start, I just want to remind our community that respect and order are the foundation of Cedar Creek." The room murmured in agreement. Karen's voice carried authority, but I noticed the flicker of nervousness behind it. "We've had recent incidents of non-compliance," she continued, deliberately not looking at me. "And I want to assure you, the board will not tolerate disruptions to our neighborhood harmony." Someone whispered my name from the back. I raised my hand. "Karen, mind if I ask what specific incidents you're referring to?" Her lips tightened. "Mark, this isn't personal." "I didn't say it was," I replied calmly. "But when fake officers show up at my door, pretending to arrest me for a flag, it starts to feel that way." The room fell silent. Heads turned. Even the other board members looked uneasy. Karen tried to laugh it off. "That was a misunderstanding. Those men were hired security. They overstepped." "Overstepped?" I said, my tone steady. "They impersonated law enforcement." "That's not an overstep. That's a crime." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's smile faltered. "Mark," she began, but I cut her off gently. "You claim to want unity, but what you want is control. And this neighborhood is tired of it." I wasn't shouting. I didn't need to. The truth carried its own volume. One of the older men in the crowd, George, who lived next to the pond, stood up. "He's right. My wife got a notice because our garden gnome was 2 inches too tall. This is getting ridiculous." Another voice joined in. "Yeah, I got fined for leaving my recycling bin out an extra hour." Karen tried to regain control. "People, please. These rules exist for a reason." "Whose reason?" I asked. For the first time, her composure cracked. "You think you can come in here and tell us how to run this community?" she snapped. I held her gaze. "No, Karen. I think it's time someone reminded you this isn't your kingdom." She stared at me, jaw tight. The room buzzed with tension. Then, realizing she was losing ground, she abruptly adjourned the meeting. The crowd left in small waves, whispering. I stayed behind for a moment, watching her pack up the paperwork with trembling hands. When she noticed me, she hissed, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," I said softly, "I think I do." That night, my security cameras caught something strange. 2 men, not the same as before, loitered near my driveway around midnight. One crouched by my mailbox. The other snapped a photo of my truck. They didn't notice the infrared light blinking above my garage. I watched the footage twice before calling Grace. "Give me a plate check on a black SUV, custom tag Cestate 01, I said. She whistled. "Karen again? Looks like it." The next morning, she called back. "That plate's registered to the HOA's corporate office downtown, the one that manages multiple neighborhoods." So it wasn't just Karen. The entire association management firm was in on it. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just personal, it was systemic. HOA boards that overstepped boundaries, hiding behind bylaws that most homeowners never bothered to read. But I wasn't most homeowners. The following week, I quietly filed an internal inquiry, not as a resident, but as chief of police. We had received multiple complaints about harassment and misuse of authority by HOAs across the county. Karen had just become the perfect case study. Still, I didn't let her know. Not yet. Instead, I played along. The next HOA notice came with a fine, $500 for excessive flag display. I paid it in cash, walked it to the HOA drop box myself, and waited. Sure enough, Karen showed up at my house the next morning, unannounced. She wore her usual perfect smile and pastel blazer, pretending to be friendly. "Mark," she said sweetly, "I just wanted to thank you for being cooperative. It means a lot to the board." I invited her in, keeping my tone neutral. "Would you like some coffee?" She hesitated, but nodded. We sat in the kitchen. Duke lay quietly at my feet, watching her. "You know," she said, stirring her drink, "you could do very well here if you just followed the system. I have influence, you know. The board listens to me." "I noticed," I said. "But sometimes power can make people forget the law." Her smile froze. "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all," I said lightly. "Just reminding you that there are boundaries, even for HOAs." She set her cup down a little too hard. "You think you can intimidate me because you used to be a cop?" I leaned back. Who said I used to be? Her eyes widened. For the first time, she looked unsure. I stood and walked her to the door. Enjoy your day, Karen. After she left, I watched her storm down the driveway, phone already in hand. Within hours, I could tell she was rallying her troops. By that evening, the HOA website had a new update. Effective immediately, community bylaws will be reviewed to address unauthorized flags, law enforcement symbols, and any display that may be deemed controversial. That was the line, the one she shouldn't have crossed. 2 days later, my department served a warrant. The charges weren't for Karen, not yet, but for the 2 fake officers. They were both employees of a private security firm contracted by the HOA management company. The impersonation charge carried serious weight, and when they were questioned, they sang. Turns out, Karen had arranged it, paid them cash, told them to make a point. The HOA board approved it quietly after the fact to cover her tracks. I didn't arrest her right away. I wanted her to sweat. By Thursday, the whispers were louder than ever. People were starting to choose sides. Half the neighborhood supported me. The other half clung to Karen's version of order. A civil war, dressed in manicured lawns and white fences. Then, that weekend, someone vandalized my mailbox. Spray paint. Slurs. A note that said, "Leave or be removed." I cleaned it off silently. I didn't react. I knew exactly how to handle bullies. You let them think they're winning right before you pull the ground out from under them. That night, I sat on my porch with Duke, watching the street. The moonlight reflected off Karen's house, where a faint glow came from her living room window. She was up late, pacing, talking on the phone, probably planning her next move. She had no idea her little empire was already collapsing. By Monday morning, her HOA management company was under investigation for fraud and harassment. The security firm had cut ties. The county legal office had issued subpoenas. But I stayed quiet. I wanted to see how long she'd pretend nothing was happening. That evening, I received a text from Grace. Asterisk Chief, thought you'd want to know. The board is holding an emergency meeting at Karen's house tonight. All members present. Asterisk. Perfect. I turned off the lights in my living room and watched through the blinds. Cars started pulling up around 8. The gray SUV was back. People filed in quickly, nervous, trying not to be seen. What they didn't know was that the whole thing was being recorded. Grace had a warrant approved earlier that afternoon. Hidden microphones, planted by the book. Everything they said that night would be evidence. I didn't know exactly what they were planning, but by the look of things, it wasn't going to end peacefully. As the night dragged on, more cars arrived. The last one to pull up belonged to someone I didn't recognize. A sleek black sedan. The man who stepped out wasn't a board member. He looked more like a lawyer or someone higher up. Karen greeted him personally at the door. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read her expression. Whatever they were discussing, it wasn't about flowers or fences. Something bigger was coming, and I planned to be ready when it hit. The HOA had made its move. Now it was my turn.